Mame fa na se ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
Mema obi biara kwa ba eba PENDREAM TV say ena your first time ha subscribe to channel na click the notification bell no so like ejumade no na share ma Ofori so ansa enkabi eye minority leader Kesel Ato Forson Ato ensembe amane president Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo Ken Ofori Atta ena afenso no baomia ena afenso no the economic management team ono from the economic mismanagement team na mepesa obeka me hono yakoti ensema Ato Forson eka answer na beko no subscribe to channel na click notification bell no so like ejumade na share ma Ofori so ensa enkabi yentie sania Ato Forson eka anense.
Ironically, they turned around to applaud themselves for securing an IMF program after running the economy aground and giving assurances to the people of Ghana that an IMF program was off the cards. Ghanaians should once again be reminded that it is not the IMF which has imposed horrible conditionalities and austerities on them, but rather President Akufo-Addo and his economic mismanagement team, led by Alhaji Dr. Bawumia, who have imposed these horrible conditionalities and austerity on the people of Ghana. Again, the government's insensitive and vindictive so-called banking sector cleanup had already dealt an irreparable damage to the Ghanaian banking sector. It is worth noting that this is the only IMF program that came with debt restructuring program. In other words, a haircut. This haircut is the first in the history of the Republic of Ghana. It is also important for us to say that this haircut program has impoverished the rich, the middle class, and even the poor. This same debt restructuring has rendered our banking and financial institutions insolvent completely, bankrupt, and literally they are on their knees. Again, it should also be noted that this is a scandal of monumental proportion that almost all banks in Ghana, non-bank financial institutions, and insurance companies declared huge losses in the year 2022 alone and counting. Our dear country is in distress. Our people are in despair, and most Ghanaians have lost hope in this incompetent NPP administration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is evidenced by the large number of young Ghanaians, professionals in particular, particularly doctors and nurses, accountants and economists, who have continued to leave the shores of our country daily in pursuit of greener pastures. And you could see that every day doctors are leaving to the UK. And I was speaking to one accounting firm. They said to me that they've lost over 40 economists and accountants moving the country in the last 3 months alone. 40 to 50 accountants and economists leaving the country. These hardships we are seeing are avoidable. In fact, they are needless, and it should have been avoided. The people of Ghana have not seen the kind of economic adjustment we are seeing in the entire life of our lifetime. Inflation rose to hyper levels of 54.1 in the year 2022. Again, this is unprecedented in the Fourth Republic of Ghana. Our cedi depreciated from 6 cedi to $1 to over 15 cedis to $1 in the year 2022 alone. If you are to calculate this on a straight line, it's 100% plus depreciation in one single year, the worst in the history of the Fourth Republic. This depreciation, coupled with inflation, have reduced the rich to middle class, the middle class to poor, and the poor has become poorer. The Bank of Ghana's governor and his deputies are without blame in this matter. In fact, they are the ones that we should be blaming, alongside the government economic mismanagement team. Their illegal and excessive printing of money caused the depletion of Ghana's external reserves, which resulted in the unprecedented depreciation of the cedi, the main cause of the hyperinflation we are seeing, or we've seen since 2022. Subsequently, the estimated 850,000 people were reported by the World Bank to have been pushed further down the poverty line in the year 2022 alone due to this inflation that we have seen. This narrative and figures are not my own creation. Indeed, they are facts contained in the official government of Ghana's document. For example, the Akufo-Addo Bawumia's government has admitted in the paragraph 2 of the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policy sent to the IMF that the illegal printing of money by the Bank of Ghana, which was supervised by the Economic Mismanagement Team, chaired by our Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Bawumia, caused the hyperinflation of 54.1% in the year 2021. This is in the paragraph 2 of the MEFP that they themselves signed by the governor and the finance minister and submitted to the IMF. Consistently with the dishonest and non-transparency on the part of this government, they vehemently denied when the minority in parliament informed the people of Ghana about the then ongoing printing of money by the Bank of Ghana and the government. Thanks to the IMF, the government has backed down from this spirited denial and has now admitted that indeed the Bank of Ghana printed money to finance this over-bloated government expenditure in the year 2022. In fact, the printing started in the year 2019. Indeed, paragraph 8 of the same IMF staff report gives further detail that the Ghana's central bank, the Bank of Ghana, not only illegally but also excessively printed over 45 billion Ghana cedis, representing 7.2% of GDP in 2022, and another 35 billion in the year 2021, their own official IMF document. And I heard Honorable Ayeraga saying that the law says you should do not more than 5%. In this case, they did 55%. 55%, if you are to put that in perspective so that people can realize what is going on. This is another unenviable first in the history of Ghana. It is important to point out that in the year 2016, on the watch of President John Dramani Mahama, and notwithstanding that there's a general election in the year 2016, the NDC government financed the entire budget without any support from the Bank of Ghana. It became, and we're expecting that was becoming a new normal in the history of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana is now a crime scene, and the managers of the economy, led by Mr. Strategist, aided and abated this crime that we are talking about. Again, the governor of the Bank of Ghana and his deputies are not without blame. Let me say that this singular crime by the Bank of Ghana and the government is responsible for pushing an additional 850,000 ordinary Ghanaians from poor to poorer and also into extreme poverty, according to the latest World Bank report. In fact, the World Bank failed to calculate the number of Ghanaians who have moved from rich to middle class and the number of them that have moved from middle class to poor. They only calculated the number that has moved from poor to extreme poor in 1 year as a result of mismanagement, and that is 850,000. My own personal calculation, I can assure you that over 2 million Ghanaians has fell victim as a result of this mismanagement that we are seeing in this economy. It is indeed instructive to point out that the key members of the economic mismanagement team that superintended the economic mismanagement that we are seeing and the economic crime we are seeing are: number one, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, also known as Mr. Strategist. Others call him Excuse Me. That is the number one. Number two, Ken Ofori. I call him One Program, One Bond, because he thinks that every program he has to borrow and solve that problem with. One program, one bond. Then we also have Governor Addison. In other words, the printer. And then also we have his two deputies, the deputy printers. We have them, Deputy 1 and Deputy 2. Printer 1, Deputy Printer 1, and Deputy Printer 2. And let us also say that these 5 officials clearly constituted an economic mismanagement team, and this is as a result of their terminal report, because the report of their work shows that they've mismanaged the economy, and that is why I call them members of economic mismanagement team, because everybody knows that they have mismanaged our economy. On the watch of this economic mismanagement team, our public debt has increased from 120 billion to 600 billion Ghana cedis plus, an increase of over 400% with very little to show. very little to show. Following these high debt levels, Ghana defaulted in the repayment of both our domestic and foreign debt, another unenviable first in the history of Ghana. Again, for the first time in the history of our dear country, and on the watch of the economic mismanagement team, pensioners and our senior citizens had to picket at the Ministry of Finance to demand the repayment of their interest and principal. Of course, we are all aware how rating agencies downgraded Ghana's credit worthiness to D. In other words, super junky. Others call it baller economy. That is where they have run this economy to. It is this unsustainable debt which resulted in the painful debt default. Today, Ghana's financial sector has virtually collapsed almost all the banks, with at least all the 23 banks in the country recording massive losses of about 18 billion Ghana cedis in the year 2022 alone, and nobody knows what they are going to happen to this year too. But let me give you some of the banks that have recorded huge losses. Absa Bank, Ghana Limited, Absa Bank, formerly Barclays Bank, in the year 2022 recorded a loss of 2.1 billion Ghana cedis 1 year. Access Bank recorded a loss of 1.26 billion Ghana cedis. ADB, formerly Agriculture Development Bank, recorded a loss of 380 million Ghana cedis. Bank of Africa, Ghana Limited, 190 million Ghana cedis losses. Car Bank PLC recorded a loss of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. 1.5 billion. Car Bank. CBG, Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited, recorded a loss of 1.81 billion Ghana cedis. CBG. EcoBank, the almighty EcoBank, recorded a loss of 1.71 billion Ghana cedis. EcoBank. FBN Ghana Limited recorded a loss of 210 million Ghana cedis. Fidelity Bank Ghana Limited recorded a loss of 1.1 billion Ghana cedis. Fidelity Bank. Then we also have First Atlantic Bank Ghana Limited recorded a loss of 230 million Ghana cedis. First National Bank Ghana Limited, another 260 million loss Ghana cedis in the year 2022 alone. GCB, the almighty Ghana Commercial Bank, recorded a loss of 2.2 billion Ghana cedis. GCB, 2.2 billion Ghana cedis in the year 2022 alone. We have the Guarantee Trust Bank Ghana Limited, 560 million Ghana cedis losses 1 year. Guaranteed Trust Bank. As for National Investment Bank, they can't even publish their annual report. They can't publish the annual report. In fact, for 4 years in a row, the National Investment Bank has failed to publish the annual report. Only God knows the losses that they are accumulating and why they are not publishing it. We have Omni Bisek Ghana Limited, a loss of 150 million Ghana cedis. Then you have Prudential Bank Ghana Limited, 700 million Ghana cedis. Republic Bank recorded a loss of 240 million Ghana cedis. Societe General Ghana Limited, 280 million Ghana cedis in losses. Then Stanbic Bank Ghana Limited, 1 billion Ghana cedis. We have the Standard Chartered Bank, 600 million Ghana cedis in losses. Then you have United Bank of Ghana, UBA, 410 million Ghana cedis in losses. Then Universal Merchant Bank Ghana Limited, 510 million Ghana cedis. Then Zenith Bank PLC, 1.2 billion Ghana cedis in losses. If you are to add all these 23 banks, none of them made profit as a result of this haircut. So you see, the actions of this government has not only destroyed the governance architecture, but has destroyed the private sector and all of us, our livelihood. That is what they have done. And that is why all of us, we have a responsibility to shout out and to get this government to do what is right. And that is why we are here today. These numbers I have mentioned is excluding the impairment and the losses of the non-bank financial institutions and the insurance companies. I once made this similar presentation in Parliament, and as soon as I finished, insurance companies, some of them reached out to me and said that you are not mentioning the losses we have made. We are barely surviving, and most of us are going to collapse if you don't start speaking for us. So now the people of Ghana, businesses, and everyone else is expecting us to speak for them. But I can assure you, we'll do just that and will not run away from that responsibility. The Bank of Ghana is in a major financial distress. In fact, it is bankrupt and requires urgent attention. The central bank itself is in distress. It is bankrupt and it will require an urgent attention. In the year 2022, under the governorship of Dr. Addison and his deputies, the Bank of Ghana recorded a loss of 60.8 billion Ghana cedis and a negative equity of 55.1 billion Ghana cedis. Let me put this 60 billion in perspective. President Mahama took office in the year 2012 after the demise of our late President John Evans Atta Mills, and then left office in the year 2016. Within that period, he added 84 billion debt to Ghana's debt stock. Put it this way, you can say that he borrowed 84 billion. 84 billion. All the development you are seeing, Circle interchange, Kasua interchange, everything, the hospitals, the highways, the major roads, 84 billion. The central bank, 1 year, debt, 60 billion. Ask yourself, how many schools, how many CHIPS compounds, how many hospitals can we use this 60 billion for? In fact, all what we are going through as a country to get an IMF program, the IMF is giving us $3 billion. This loss is equivalent to $6 billion, 2 times what the IMF is giving to us, even with haircut. So that is why you should be worried about it. This explains why paragraph 18 of the Memorandum of Economic and Financial Policy, the MEFP, stated that the government and the Bank of Ghana will assess the impact of the debt restructuring on the Bank of Ghana's balance sheet and develop plans to recapitalize it. So expect some form of recapitalization of the central bank, because in the MEFP, it is captured that they are going to develop a strategy to recapitalize it. Later on, I'll explain to you what may happen. In its present form, the Bank of Ghana exists merely in name under the leadership of Governor Addison and his 2 deputy printers. We are talking about a central bank which has been so mismanaged and that it has recorded an unprecedented loss. As if that mismanagement was not enough, its officials have the sheer audacity and the sheer audacity to look Ghanaians in the face and tell us that the Bank of Ghana was not set up to make profit. If I may ask, ladies and gentlemen, was the Bank of Ghana set up to make losses? Certainly no. Ladies and gentlemen, you will recall that the governor of the Bank of Ghana, in justifying the outrageously expensive new Bank of Ghana head office of over $250 million, stated that he commenced the construction with profit from 2019 to 2021. If I may ask once again, now that the Bank of Ghana has made an unprecedented loss of 60.8 billion, equivalent of $6 billion, which is with a negative equity of 51.1 billion, how are they going to continue the construction of their so-called earthquake-resistant Bank of Ghana head office with these losses? I may ask, now that the Bank of Ghana is claiming that the building is 41% complete, are they going to fund the remaining 59% from their losses? Now that they've made losses, since he said they were not set up, are they going to continue with the losses that they've made? I need to ask. Or is it that Governor Addison will print more money, the printer will print more money to finance the head office? For those of you who may be asking, how did the Bank of Ghana get into this mess? The answer is simple, and I beg give you. The actions of Governor Addison and his two deputies to illegally and excessively print money to finance government over bloated expenditure and reckless borrowing by the finance minister, Mr. One Program, One Bond, is the reason. Is the reason why we are where we are. All of these were under the direct supervision. Remember this. All what has happened in our economy were under the direct supervision by Alhaji Bawumia, the chairman of the economic mismanagement team. Always remember this. Because without him, they can't do this. And he cannot run away from this fact, because it's the reality. They are responsible for causing this mess and cannot escape culpability in this matter. Let me also state that another cardinal sin of the governor of the central bank and his deputies is their decision to write off government debt on the blind side of parliament. It's a cardinal sin. The governor and his deputies are not a law unto themselves. They cannot exercise powers that they do not have. They have no right. They cannot therefore arrogate to themselves the power to unilaterally write off government debt without recourse to parliament. In this case, Parliament of Ghana. In clear violation of Section 53 of the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921. It's clear. 921, Section 53 spells out how you can write out government debt. The Bank of Ghana is regulated by law. And those of us in the minority caucus will continue to ensure that they follow and operate within the laws of Ghana. Already, the Bank of Ghana and the government have written off about 48.4 billion Ghana cedis of government debt. 48.4 billion Ghana cedis of government debt owned to the Bank of Ghana without parliamentary approval. And in fact, Section 96 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, which spells out offenses and penalties, will have to apply without fail. It has to apply. On the watch of President Akufo-Addo, the Vice President, Dr. Alhaji Bawumia, the government had succeeded in collapsing almost all state institutions, including the Bank of Ghana, which is now bankrupt with negative equity of 55.1 billion Ghana cedis and counting. But in the coming days, we will take the SOEs one by one and digest what has happened to the SOEs. Immediately after Cocoa Board, we'll jump to the others. Why should Ghanaians be worried about the mess that this government has created in the Bank of Ghana? And that is the key question. Why should we, as Ghanaians, be worried about the mess that this government has created at the Bank of Ghana? All of us should be worried because ultimately the Ghanaian taxpayer would be required to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. Ultimately, you will be required to recapitalize the Central Bank of the Republic of Ghana. Considering the average profit made by the Bank of Ghana since 2012, which is about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis, and assuming that all this profit will be retained going forward, in this case they will not even build a head office, assuming that they won't build head office, they won't travel, they will cut down all on their losses, and then they will make profit of 1.5 billion on average, since that is the case in the last since 2012. It would take more than 20 years for the government of Ghana's central bank, in this case Bank of Ghana, to move to a positive equity. 20 years. This means that the fate of the Bank of Ghana hangs solely in the ability of a government that is in itself insolvent or bankrupt to recapitalize it. It will only take the people of Ghana to recapitalize it. Ladies and gentlemen, from the minorities' analysis of this mess, there are only three options to get the Bank of Ghana out of this self-inflicted predicament. Only three options. Option one, introduce a tax to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. Maybe Bank of Ghana recapitalization levy as signaled in the IMF document. as signaled in the IMF document, because they are hiding something that's what they may have to do. Or, number 2, divert proceeds of an existing tax to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana, and therefore forgo critical government expenditure in education, health, and roads. So, opportunity cost. We either take all our tax revenues to give to the central bank to recapitalize it, and then we will not get roads, we will not get hospitals, and our education will be in tatters. That's another option. Then option 3, this government, which has borrowed more than all government combined in the history of the Fourth Republic, in fact in the history of Ghana, may have to borrow another $6 billion. Already we've borrowed, we can't pay, and now nobody wants to lend us money. To fill this crater at the Bank of Ghana, we have to borrow to fill it. And if we are to go and borrow to get the central bank solvent, in the end, it's the taxpayer who will have to service that debt. And that is why I'm saying, ultimately, the burden is on you and I, the taxpayer, to fix it, to recapitalize the central bank. And that is why you should be worried. The mess this government has caused is incredible, shocking, and irredeemable. It's unacceptable, and Ghanaians should not forgive this government for such a mess. And our vice president cannot run away from this fact. The outlook for our country still looks grim, notwithstanding the sacrifices that the ordinary Ghanaian has so far shown. This Bawumia-led economic mismanagement team should be apologizing to the people of Ghana for destroying livelihoods, our country, and our motherland. And let me take this again. This Bawumia-led economic mismanagement team, and you know them. 1, Alhaji Bawumia, Mr. Strategist, or excuse me. 2, Ofori Atta, 1 program, 1 bond. 3, Printer 1 and 2 deputy printers. They should be apologizing to the people of Ghana for the mess that they have created. They should be apologizing to us for the mess that they have created. To put it simple, the Bank of Ghana cannot unilaterally write off government debt without the approval of Parliament. This government does not take responsibility for its failures. The performance of this economic mismanagement team, despite the hype since 2017, over the past 7 years, has been abysmal, to say the least. In conclusion, let me say that the Bank of Ghana, with Governor Addison and his 2 deputy governors in charge, has aided the Akufo-Addo and Bawumia government to derail the macroeconomic stability achieved since 1992. The one that every successive government has helped build. They have derailed all the gains that we have made, the reputation and the gains. After careful assessment of the policies implemented by the current managers of the Bank of Ghana, it is clear and without doubt that the deterioration in the macroeconomic fundamentals is due to policy missteps since 2019 after exiting the 16th IMF program. All this mess started after 2019. Beginning 2019, as soon as they left the IMF program, that is when they said that, hey, now we have freedom, let's mess it up. And it started. They started messing themselves and messing the people of Ghana up as soon as they had that freedom. The overarching policy for price stability in the context of Ghana is the implementation of prudent monetary policies that ensures general price stability and inflation within a target band of 8 plus or minus 2. That is the monetary overarching policy of the the government of Ghana. But what is the reality today? Inflation is currently 43.1% and rising, even though projected to be 31.3% by end of the year. 43% and rising. Monetary policy rate is 30% and rising, and commercial lending rate is now 36% and also rising. 91-day T-bill rate is now 27% and rising. So clearly, we can see that the overarching policy of monetary policy has been defeated, and the constitutional mandate of price stability imposed on the central bank, they have failed. And that is why the governor there and his 2 deputy printers must all leave. We, the minority in parliament, do not believe that Those who caused the mess at the Bank of Ghana, Addison the printer and his 2 deputy printers, are capable of fixing this this mess that they created themselves. It requires a new set of leadership at the Bank of Ghana.
PENDREAM TV now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.